Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town. I'm the mayor, Heath Sheeran, and the host of this podcast. I'm pumped you're hanging out with me. I got my man, Tyler Brown, going to be hanging out with us today. But before I get into that, I got to talk about my sponsors for just a moment while I keep him out at bay. He's dying to get in here, but I'm going to make him wait a minute. Guys, I couldn't do this show without my friends over at Canopy Connect. They are your one-click solution to getting the deck pages you need to quote your prospects. And they also have the intake platforms. They also can get you loss runs. They could do so many things. If you're not using Canopy Connect, I don't know what you're doing. Go to usecanopy.com/Heath and check it out. Also, my good friends over at Mav. You hate call centers. Your clients hate call centers. Yeah, people hate robocalls. So ditch the call center and work with Mav. And they do it through text messaging that works. And they help you to qualify leads, to get leads, and to connect them to your salespeople so they have a higher close ratio. Go to hiremav.com and check it out. And make sure you tell them the mayor sent you. They're just phenomenal. Also, lastly, my good friends over at OneFort, our newest sponsor to the show. OneFort is AI for insurance agencies, and it's not your typical AI wrapper. It's not some ChatGPT covered up in OneFort. No, it is. It's incredible what they're doing, and to help you close more deals, help you with your sales, and they do it through your emails. It's a totally different way of doing things. You're not having to log into a portal or having to log into some platform they have. Go to onefort.ai and make sure you check it out. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't wait to introduce you to my friend Tyler. So, ladies and gentlemen, Tyler Brown, get on in here, man. How you doing, brother?
Doing good. Happy to be here. I know about some cool sponsors now. I might have to check them out.
Yeah, you definitely should, man. I couldn't do this show without my sponsors. They're the best, man. And I absolutely love it because people reach out to me and they're like, man, that was a game changer. I'm so glad you introduced me to these sponsors, and so much fun, man. I'm so thankful for having them. But Tyler, tell me about you, man. You're in Atlanta. We were talking about this a little bit off air or in that area, but your family, like farming family? You come from a farming family?
Yeah. So born in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Right around when I was 5, my parents decided that the best move to keep us entertained was to go live on the grandparents' farm.
Yeah.
We went down to South Georgia. I learned to roll some hail bays around yeah, there we go. I said it right.
I think you did. Yeah, it sounded right.
There we go. I got it backwards.
Yeah, no, you're all good, bro. I like it.
Yep. I never got to ride a bull yet, but hopefully that comes in the near future.
Heck yeah, dude. That's awesome. Yeah, I actually lived in Alpharetta, Georgia for a little bit. I got some family up in Trenton, Georgia, and just, got a Georgia connection. My dad, he took another position in the insurance industry in Arkansas. We moved to Arkansas 100 years ago, it feels like. So, and it's been good. When I remember we moved out to Arkansas from Atlanta, I was like, golly, what are you doing, Dad? Like, I'm sure it was probably like that for you going from Brooklyn. Like, oh my gosh, going from the big city to farming. But anyhow, and so tell me a little bit about your background a little bit. Take me on a walk down memory lane and tell me a little bit more about what brought you into insurance.
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm one of those kids who happened upon insurance on accident. I went to college for computer engineering. I love just programming, coding, building computers from scratch, like all that fun stuff, soldering motherboards. But I got out of college, and all of a sudden I was looking at the job market like, oh no, this is not what I was prepared for. I happen to know a guy who sold insurance, and I didn't even know what he did at the time. He was just like, I'm always hiring. If you ever need a job, let me know. Okay, well, I need a job, so I'm going to give him a call. Got me onboarded, and I sucked for about 3 months.
Most people do, bro. Most people do.
It's the hardest, but the most fulfilling thing, right? It's like it's the cool thing about sucking in insurance is there's something you can do about it. Like in a lot of other fields, it's you have to do this or wait for that, and you just have to give it time. But I mean, you just call more people, you sell more policies, because you're going to eventually learn that you're helping people, which I think is the secret switch that flips for a lot of people when they start to succeed, is that you're not necessarily doing this just for a paycheck. It's the family on the other end who's eventually not going to have to go into insane debt, or not be able to bury somebody because they didn't have something in place that kind of changes the whole landscape for you.
Yeah, for sure. And so, were you in a captive environment, exclusive environment when you first started out?
Yeah, Globe Life, captive, only could sell the one product, which was probably better for me at the time, because when you're first getting introduced to it, or at least when I was first getting introduced to it, it's overwhelming to say the least. But yeah,
Yeah, totally.
once I got, go ahead.
I said totally. It could be very overwhelming, even at a captive.
Yeah, that's for sure. But once I got the hang of it, man, I feel like it ports to anything. I mean, anywhere I go, I can help somebody if they need help.
Yeah, dude. And Globe Life. Are you still with Globe Life now?
No, so just recently I've kind of graduated, I guess, to the IMO world. I'll say it that way because it's got its pros and cons. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit more freedom and a little bit more access to people who need the help, which is kind of where my focus is shifting almost a little bit, from the families who I'm helping to the people who I'm helping to change the life of their families, and also everybody else who they end up helping through insurance. So IMO just seemed like a better avenue for that at this point.
Yeah, and so I learned a little bit about your story, and I read some things about what you were doing, and you know, you've been in a world of, imagine being at Globe Life, you were in a world where you were having to just smile and dial and just pick up the phone and start calling people or knocking doors or whatever it might have been. And so tell me, first of all, starting out, there's a lot of people listening to this show right now that are in that mode or they've been there before. What was that experience for you coming into it at this day and age, you know, smiling and dialing? And even though you've got some of that at your fingertips, when I first started, again, I'm old. When I first started, they didn't even have Google. They didn't have, like, we literally had to use a phone book. And so talk to me about a little bit about what that was for you. And then like that mental state it took on you, because it kind of messes with you mentally.
Yeah. I'll be honest. It for the first 3-4 days, I was like, "Oh my god, I don't think I'm gonna make it." After that, I turned it into a little bit of a game. I said, "I wonder if I can beat the record for how many calls are called in a day." So my upline at the time was like, "Hey, in order to make a sale every day, you got to do 300 dials. Like that's just kind of the baseline." And so I said to myself, "So if I want 2 sales, I got to do 6." I'm over here doing the math. I was like, on an iPhone, it takes 50 seconds to do a full call if nobody picks up. But on an Android, it takes 37. So I went and bought a Samsung, and I was knocking out somewhere around 600, and I sucked. So I didn't get my 2 sales a day for a while.
But bro, it's 600 dials or 300 dials for that matter. That's a lot of rejection. That's a lot of no's.
So many no's. And you know what hurts more than the no's is the think about it. It's when you don't have any objection handling. And so you're genuinely sitting there for like, "I'll call you back tomorrow. I just don't have time right now." So I'm sitting there at 10 o'clock in the morning with my phone in hand, texting them, Are you on the way? What are we doing?" A lot of no's, but they make you stronger. What doesn't kill you make you stronger. So I'd say my favorite thing about psychology change is that I told myself the no's were the better part, because I don't know, it's like you start to love the journey instead of the destination in anything you do. It's when you actually start succeeding.
Well, yeah. And for me, and again, probably not this way for you, but I remember for me, I was sitting here thinking at, let's say in your position, at 600 dials a day, and however many that is in a week, you're like, I'm going to run out of people after a while because I'm calling a lot of freaking people and I'm getting a lot of no's. Eventually, I'm going to run out of people. Obviously, there's billions of people, but you're sitting here thinking, I'm going to run out.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a lot of times. Which is actually where I found my niche. I kept running out of people.
Yeah.
And when you run out of people enough times and you're not selling, you start to say to yourself, I don't have the money to buy more leads. And if I keep double tapping these people, they're gonna all block me. And so I started asking people. I'm like, actually, I'll ask you. When you first started running into that issue, what was the first pivot that worked for you?
When I first started, like when I ran out of people,
Yeah, when you ran out of people.
I started going back to the originals and started following up and started, and that was something in my early, like I started when I was 21. And so I started going back and, realized real quickly. And now I talk about it all the time of the follow up and how important that is. But it was like, hey, we talked last week about this, or I got really good at objection handling. That was the other thing. If someone would say, hey, let me talk to my wife about it, I'd be like, or my spouse about it, I'd be like, well, when's your spouse going to be around? And at that point, they're like, oh, like he's calling me on my bluff. Now I got to either tell him the truth or I got to really commit now. And so they either commit to the lie or they commit to, let me check. And I'd be like, all right, I'll call you back in an hour or two. I'll give you enough time to text your wife, get some response, or your spouse, your husband, whatever. You'd be like, all right, cool. And then I'd be like, oh, what about 2:00 on Thursday? Would they be available then? I'll just set up a time then, whatever it might have been. Or like, I would follow up and say, hey, we talked. You said maybe, I wanted to check in with you. And then after a while, I'll be honest, Tyler, I got to the point where I got brutally honest. And I would just be like, I'm trying to grow my book of business. I'm trying to do this, and my dad told me, or my trainer told me it's going to take me 3 to 5 years to grow a good book, but I don't like 3 or 5 years to be broke. I'm getting tired of ramen, bro. Could you help me out? This is definitely something I believe in. I think it's important to you and your family to have this life insurance or this car insurance or whatever it might have been. And so I just started getting brutally honest and people started respecting that. So anyway, that's a long answer to a short question.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a secret hack that a lot of people never notice, is that you can be a human in front of other people, right? Like if you're having a conversation and they're just like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. I will sit there and 100% be like, I'm noticing that you're kind of trying to circumvent the real problem here, which I get. Sometimes it's awkward, but is it actually important for you to make sure that your family's protected so that when something happens to you, your wife doesn't lose the house and have to send the kids off with grandma? Or is it more so that it's just like not in the budget for today? What's actually going on there? And then all of a sudden you get a real answer.
100%, and especially, people want to talk about transparency and they want to talk about being authentic and they want to talk about being real. And when you call them out on it, a lot of, but they'll respect that, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing. The only other secret I really learned to succeed is after I started calling people out and I actually had some deals going, man, referrals. And the cool thing about it is the other person, that's kind of what was broken in my mind. I asked somebody, who else do you know that needs insurance? The answer is no. Because, I mean, if you're not an insurance agent, you're not really going up to your best friend and being like, what happens when you die? You know what I mean? You just don't know. So instead, I just pitched it differently. Hey, we want to make sure that you get paid out when something happens. So tell me this, who are like your 10 closest friends that we can just have as emergency contacts so that if anything happens, they can inform us and we can get that done, taken care of sooner. They give me 10 people. I'm like, hey, I want to be transparent. They are going to know you have insurance. And if they don't, or they need better coverage, or they have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for them. So I don't want you shocked out of your boots if anybody else buys any. But just know if they do, it means that you kind of started this domino effect in your family where everybody wants to be responsible and taken care of. So I'm proud of you for that. And then boom, my book of business started growing. I was like, what the heck?
Dude, that is awesome. And I'm doing the math in my head, at 600 calls, over 3,000 calls a week or whatnot. What are some other things that, that many repetitions of calls and that many, calls taught you that maybe a script couldn't? Because I'm sure you were given scripts and you were given this and you were given that. What are some of those things that maybe we haven't already talked about that you could talk to my audience about, whether they're in PNC, whether they're in life and health, whether they're in, you name it? Talk to me like what are some of those things that 3,500 dials taught you that a script couldn't?
Yeah. Well, I'll be transparent. Once I started the referral thing and calling people out, the calls went down significantly because you literally can't call 600 people if you're selling 2 or 3 a day. It takes too long. But the reason I was able to do that is because what I started doing is, and I'll be honest, I had to start making money before my brain could make this transition because at first I was a little bit sales breath. But after I had like 2 or 3 sales, maybe 4 or 5 sales in a week, and I was feeling stable, I started actually listening to people. And here's what I mean by that, because everybody says listen better. When somebody says a sentence, they tend to emphasize the most emotional part without even thinking about it. So if somebody says, "Yeah, I already have some coverage," and then you go in and you say, "Oh, you already have some coverage. Well, what happened that made you decide to grab some coverage?" You know what I mean? Or if somebody says, "Oh, I feel like I don't really need insurance," then I say, "That's interesting. A lot of people don't really say that they don't need it. They're just like, I'm not ready. Why do you feel like you don't need it at all, like ever?" You start going deep on the emotional triggers and the important words of every sentence, and you have to have the script there, or at least I did, because I would get lost and then all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know where to go next. But you kind of have to take a second and say, the script is important, but so is the human being in front of me. And I am just so curious why we're having this conversation and what's important to you. And once you can actually listen intently with that in mind of what's their life situation looking like, not only did I sell more policies, but I sold way bigger policies, because instead of me just trying to get some whole life on them or get them a term life or get them some hospital benefits, some living benefits, I'm sitting there and thinking, well, if your wife and kids, you just bought a house, that's 300 grand, and you don't have any insurance that is going to keep it in the family, it goes back to the bank, and then the wife has to go get an apartment for $1,000 a month after working two jobs, and your kids can't go to college. Sounds like we need a little bit more for your own peace of mind. And then the policies grew, and everybody felt the chargebacks disappeared because people actually needed what you were getting them. I mean, just my personal rule, and the rule I teach everybody who works with me, is you got to go 3 layers deep, right? I think about a cake. If you're eating a red velvet cake with icing in it, and you just take off the first layer, you're a weirdo, because why did you dig that deep and then push the cake away? You know what I mean? You kind of got to go that first layer, and then you're like, oh, there's more to this. Do that second layer. Oh, there's more to this. Third layer, you reach the end. Sometimes it's a bigger cake. Sometimes you got to go 8 or 9 layers. But my rule is 3, because you'll never know if you stop at 1 or 2.
Yeah, and I talk to people about that a lot. I got into the whole Simon Sinek thing and the whole, what's your why, and I got into that for a little bit. And when I started working with teams and started consulting with people about their why and whatnot, I'd always try to go 5 and 6 layers on the why. Like, why is this important to you? Oh, because I want to do this. Well, why do you want to do this? Oh, because of that. Well, why? And once you start digging in deeper, to your point, people say, oh, and then you really start uncovering the truth of what things are. And I do that on my kids all the time, and I'm trying to talk to my kids about, well, even little things when they were younger. It'd be like, okay, well, why do you have to have this toy? Oh, because, you know, Johnny has it or whatever. Well, why does it matter that Johnny has this toy? Well, because they talk about it at school all the time and I'm getting left out of the conversations and I just really want to be a part of it. It looks like fun. Well, why is that important to you that, they have that, or just tell me why? Well, because I don't like being left out of conversations. Then I feel lonely and I feel sad, like when they were younger, and it'd be like, oh, well, that's important to them that they don't feel that way, and be like, okay. And I would just keep going. And finally came to the point where I was like, oh, I get it. And it's a dumb example, but at the same time, same thing works with humans. When you were talking about life insurance, okay, well, why? And why is that important? Why is that? And just digging deeper. It sounds like even this, conversation that we've had before this and now here, you're a very inquisitive dude by nature, it sounds like. And so that's got to help. And obviously, I have a podcast for the last 6 years, so I'm an inquisitive dude myself. But that's got to help you to have that connection with humans.
Yeah, I think that's it actually made me think about it when you were saying, like, you go into the whys. The people don't know themselves most of the time. And so that's another layer of patience. Look, man, you got to be a human, right? And so when you're saying, for instance, you're talking to the kids and you say, "Why do you want this toy?" And they're like, "I want to feel left. I don't want to feel left out." You got to understand that that might need a break. Like, you might have to be quiet for a second and be like, let the kid realize that they don't just want a toy. They're tired of feeling left out. And then you can go so much. You you connect with somebody so much more because it's like, how long have you been feeling left out? And who's making you feel left out? And what specifically was said that you took to heart the first time and it's like, oh, I'm not a part of this. And then you can, oh, I mean, it's just such a powerful, and I think my biggest issue, but also my biggest gift, you know how it is, it's like a blessing and a curse, is sometimes I'll genuinely spiral with them and just be like, whoa, like now I gotta get more picture of this. Let's dive into this. I feel like a therapist half the time because sometimes the clients end up crying because it's just, they realize for the first time, for instance, I was selling insurance one day and she was, I mean, a lovely lady. It was sad because it was like when I just started selling insurance, not just like maybe 6 months in. I'm still living with my parents at the time. My mom's in the other room. I'm like, you got to go away because like insurance is a legal thing. I can't have anybody hearing my conversation with clients. And my mom was like, sorry, I just came around because I heard the lady crying. What in the world did you say to her? I was like, well, we realized that her parents didn't have insurance, and so that's why her entire family line has been struggling financially for the entire time, is because they've been trying to recuperate the funding they lost because they believed they had to pay off the debts of their father. And so now her whole trauma is linked to a lack of life insurance. And I mean, at a certain point, I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, I don't know when we're going to come back to fixing this problem, but I'm glad we understand it because now you and I just know so much more about. I mean, it's points like that where I just feel like I'm genuinely helping people. You know, that's the secret to it. That's, at least it's my secret. I don't know.
No, I think it's fantastic. I do. And so you kind of started figuring these things out. You got to a place where you were, becoming more of a human with them, and you're talking with people. And what I love to hear is that, and a lot of people will say when their numbers started growing, it was because it was a numbers game. And like you said, if I do 600, I'm gonna get more. And it's like, is that real sales or you just, stats? And really, one out of 300 is not good stats. If you're looking at baseball numbers or basketball numbers or anything like that's terrible. And my dad used to tell me, because again, when I first got into it, it was knocking doors, literally getting out and knocking doors, and it would be like you gotta get 20 in order to get one. And so I'm like, God, I could get out of the car 20 times. I hear a no 20 times. But again, when you get to a place where you get successful, you said your numbers went down and that shrunk. And I think that's when you see true success. Yeah, anybody could call 5,000 people and get one or two yeses. And then out of that, your commission's going to be, a couple $100. And it's like, man, that's a lot of work for a couple $100. But yours went down. What did you do? There's got to be something that flipped. And I know you and I have talked, you did something crazy, and spent some time working on a little side project, so to speak, but you found some success there. And I'd love for the audience to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, in order to get there, I have to go back in time a tiny bit to March of last year. So in March of last year is when I found true success. And by that, I mean, I had an 85% close rate, 84.3 to be specific.
Wow.
It was by far the worst and best month of my life. I was in Mexico because I just needed some fresh air and new space. I went and got an Airbnb in Mexico. I'm just standing in front of a desk all day, every day. I'm like, while I'm on this hot streak, I'm going to make enough money for the rest of the year. I'm not chancing anything. So for an entire month, I had an 85% close rate. ALP was a little above 100 grand. And so I got like a little trophy corner. I don't even look at the things like they're collecting dust. But I had to take a step back and I said, how did we get here? And hundreds of calls, thousands of calls, a lot of trial and error, a lot of bad pitches, a lot of people who never want to talk to me again, and a lot of hard work and dedication that I started asking around and saying, hey, how much time are you putting into your actual sales techniques? And people were like, we don't have time. We're just calling insurance. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I sell insurance for 8 hours a day. I go play basketball, go to the gym for an hour or two. I eat for an hour or two. That's a lot of time left. You got to sleep. I go on YouTube and I start just doing a little bit of videos while I'm in a car driving, maybe working on my skill set. And what specifically happened is I decided to help a B2B insurance company called Corgi. They do liability and tenant waivers like insurance, and they just called me in as a consultant, asked me a couple, like, help me to train their team. And for the first time, because I started insurance in the Zoom era, so I don't see what people do. They can't like ask me questions. You know what I mean? Because it's like they're on Zoom. And so I was in person for the first time, and I saw just how much of a struggle it is for a brand new agent in any insurance field to actually know where to go from here. And then they'll have a call, and this one sticks in my brain. Somebody once told somebody, it was like their second day, and they got on the phone with one of the clients, and the client says, "Can't talk right now. My bunny's dying. Gotta call me back." Hangs up. The kid comes out to the office and he's like, "Guys, how do I handle this objection? They said their bunny's dying." And I sit there, I'm like,
That's hilarious.
you don't, you know? There's sometimes where it's just gonna be okay. But the problem is when you first start, you need somebody to tell you that sometimes it's just not gonna happen. Sometimes their bunny is dying. And so if the prospect says, anything can happen, life is short. And then an agent might say, "Yeah, that's true." And that's why it's so important to get life insurance. When they might have been supposed to say, "Well, it's not too often people admit that life is so, we never know what's going to happen." When did you realize that? What happened to make you realize that life is so unexpected? And then all of a sudden you're opening the prospect up. They're telling you about a time they almost died and what would have happened to their family if it had happened. That just would have never crossed your mind. And the trainer that you may have gone to with a failed close and said, "Hey, where did I get wrong?" And they're sitting there thinking, "Well, you probably did this, but I don't know because I wasn't there for the call." Now you have somebody in your corner on every call who hears everything you say and can fix it on the spot. So that mixed with just it's also got a super hyper prompted chat where you can literally just ask it those questions. What happens if they say my bunny died? What happens if they are in the car and I want to make sure they're on Zoom so that I have a higher close rate? Whatever questions you need to ask and answers that way, you can go ahead and get them on Nova Intel. So that's just it was originally just a passion project to save me a little bit of time with my own agents, and it just kept growing because I posted it on LinkedIn and a couple people were like, "I want to buy that." And I was like, I can sell things? What? And then it just kind of kept going from there.
But I love that I think it's cool that you built that, and like people want to reach out next, definitely check out that website. But that you brought in a human element of it and made people, or like yourself, you realize to step back, because a traditional robotic salesperson would have been like, "Oh, your bunny died. That's exactly why you need life insurance, because you could die tomorrow," or some stupid crap like that. Or, when some other objection comes up like that, or life is so short. You're right. It's really easy for a life insurance agent to be like, "Yeah, that's why you should probably get life insurance." And again, in most cases, that probably people would say, "Oh, that's a great job." You stick to the script. But for you to be able to step back and be like, "Yeah, what happened to make you feel that way?" And like you said, they'll start telling you, "I just lost my father last year," or my wife passed away, or my daughter at 3 years old was diagnosed with leukemia, or whatever it might have been. Then you're like, "Oh wow." And just by listening, I think then before the call gets off, it ends the call, it's like they're gonna be asking you about life insurance. Like, "Oh, now that I'm saying all this out loud, Tyler, I probably should talk to you a little bit about life." And you probably haven't said a word about life insurance.
Yep.
Or if you're listening right now and you're selling workers' comp or bot policy or whatever it might be, same situation. You don't have to always be closing. I know there's that whole always be closing, but you can always be listening and just trying to offer advice and just be there. And again, my biggest thing off of this call that I think is important for salespeople to listen to is, too many people think they could just be one call closers, and they can get on a call and they got the prospects like, well, I'm going to close him. And if I don't, then it's over. No, it may take 2 or 3 calls after you have that heartwarming conversation with Sally on the phone about how they lost their grandfather or their bunny died or whatever. It might be something where you're okay with saying, hey, let's continue this conversation tomorrow, or next week or whenever. I've got several other calls today or got some other stuff going on. It sounds like you have a lot going on. Let's reconnect later instead of trying to do a 1-call close.
Respect people. Sounds cool, but it's normal. It should be normal.
Totally. You're 100% correct.
Yeah. I think one other thing that kind of comes to my mind is I like to tell my agents, don't be ChatGPT. Don't be Gemini. Don't be Claude. And here's why I say that.
No, I love it. Keep going.
Everybody who's ever used one of those things, they'll put in like a sentence and the AI will just assume up to the sky and just start doing something that had nothing to do with the original goal. And then you got to step back and be like, wait. I meant this, not this. And I'm trying to get this goal. And then it's like, oh, I can actually help with that. And then maybe it's helpful. But when you're selling insurance, how many times do you hear somebody say something and your brain says, oh, I know where this goes. Let me jump there. First of all, you might be wrong. Second of all, maybe the prospect doesn't know that's where this goes. And so you skipped 5, 6, and 7. You jumped from step 4 to 8, and they're completely lost. Rest of the call, they're silent, and you don't know why they died. Well, because you actually ChatGPT.
Well, and even like to take it even more human, like, I don't know, Tyler, if you're married or not, you seem like a really young guy. I don't know if you're married, kids or anything like that. But, my wife tells me all the time, I just want you to listen to me. I don't need you to solve my challenge. I don't need you to solve my problem. And a lot of times your partners will be that way. Whether it's your husband, your spouse, your wife, whatever it might be, they'll be like, I don't want you to solve the problem. I just want you to listen. And so many times I jump right into problem solving mode. And my wife's like 30 seconds in and my mind's already racing to, as soon as she shuts up, I'm going to blow her away with the biggest, response and give her, and I'm going to solve her challenge. And she's going to be like, oh, my hero. But most of the time when I do that, it's like, babe, I just wanted you to listen. I didn't need an answer. I didn't need a response. I didn't need you to sell me on your response. Same thing in insurance. Like, if you get people talking, they don't need you to immediately come off mute on a Zoom call and say, oh, that's why you need life insurance. Let's get this closed. I'm going to send you this, DocuSign here, do this. We'll get EFT, or do you want to do this? It's not that way. And I tell people when I was a sales trainer full time, I'd be like, put the pen down. If you're in front of them, put the pen down and just listen. Hey, thank you for stepping into Insurance Town, to use your wording, and for just being a part of it and just for sharing your wisdom. And I love seeing, young people succeed in our insurance industry. I love seeing, I love hearing your story, and I can't wait for us to become friends outside of this. And I'm gonna have to get you a friendship bracelet in the mail, and we'll do the whole thing. But dude,
my mom knit you a sweater.
Heck yeah, dude, I would love that, and I would wear it for sure. But yeah, man, thank you so much for hanging out, and thank you for being a part of it. And if people want to connect with you, LinkedIn, the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can go to LinkedIn, Tyler Brown. Most of my handles are going to be either Nova Intel or Tyler Brown JW. You can find me pretty much everywhere. But easiest way to find me is to type in novaintel.io, NOVAINTEL.io, and you can fill out any contact us form, and you'll end up on a phone call with me personally.
That's awesome, dude. Thank you. Dude, thank you so much again for being here. I appreciate you, and we will definitely talk again soon.
Looking forward to it.